Did you know that there's a country in Europe with 3 heads of state at the same time? Yes, I haven't gone mad. 3 presidents simultaneously. And no, we're not talking about some political sitcom, but about one of the strangest systems of government you could possibly imagine. We're talking about Bosnia and Herzegovina, one of the most unusual states you can think of, and living proof that the Balkans are still a real powder keg. Because the 3 presidents aren't the result of whimsy or some political lab experiment, it's literally a matter of national survival. And here's the thing, what comes next is the key to understanding why Bosnia works, or rather why it hasn't blown up yet. But before we dive in, let me ask you this. Remember when people worried technology would replace humans? Well, it's already happening. AI is driving massive white-collar layoffs. Amazon, JP Morgan, Ford, already cutting jobs. And estimates say Microsoft could let go of up to 36% of its workforce because of AI automation. But here's the thing. While some are being replaced, others are using AI to get ahead, earn more, and even launch new careers. Which side would you rather be on? That's why I want to tell you about the 2-day AI Mastermind by Outskill, happening this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 10 AM to 7 PM. In just 16 hours, you'll go from AI rookie to confident pro, learning directly from expert mentors and mastering 10+ powerful AI tools. Normally, this program costs $895, but we've partnered with Outskill, the world's largest AI education platform, to give 1,000 free seats exclusively for our viewers. That's nearly $900,000 worth of training, free for the next 72 hours. Over 4 million people from around the world have already attended and loved it. You'll learn prompt engineering to get incredible results with AI, 10 essential AI tools like Make.com, Agentic Hub, Claude, and more, using AI in Excel and creating professional presentations, building AI agents to automate work and boost productivity, and even creating apps and websites with the help of AI. No matter your background, HR, marketing, sales, business owner, freelancer, this training is for you. And if you sign up now, you'll also get bonuses worth $5,000. Day 1, the Prompt Bible, 3,000+ prompts. Day 2, a roadmap to make money with AI, and your personal AI toolkit builder if you attend both days. Seats are going fast. Grab yours now via the link in the description and join the WhatsApp group for updates. And now, back to our topic.
Bosnia and Herzegovina is a country built on a boiling mix of ethnic and religious groups that, not too long ago, barely 3 decades, were at each other's throats. And I mean literally, because the war that took place there between 1992 and 1995 left around 100,000 dead in its wake. And in some ways, the spark that lit that fire is still very much alive.
In fact, the country is monitored and subjected to a high representative, appointed by a group of more than 50 countries, with the power to impose laws, annul any that go against the peace agreements, or even dismiss officials on the spot. In practice, decades after the war, Bosnia remains a kind of international protectorate. Everything is hanging by a thread. All it would take is a single spark for the powder keg to go off again. And you know what? That spark that could blow everything sky high has just happened.
Bosnia and Herzegovina in crisis as Bosnian Serb president rallies for secession.
Secession? A Serb Bosnian president? Wait, what on earth is all this? Well, to understand this whole mess, we need to look at this man, the one responsible for Bosnia and Herzegovina being on edge once again, Milorad Dodik. This is probably the first time you've seen his face or heard his name, and that's perfectly normal. He's not even the president of a country, although, make no mistake, his power is practically as if he were. Dodik is the president of the Republika Srpska, one of the 2 halves into which Bosnia was split after the Dayton Accords of 1995. That agreement granted the Serbs their own republic, but within Bosnia. And here's the curious part. Bosnia is a republic, but in reality, it's made up of 2 almost independent entities. Inside the country, there's another republic with its own parliament, its own government, its own police force, and an enormous degree of autonomy. The result is that the country is divided like this. On the one side, we have the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, home to the Bosniak majority and a Croatian minority. On the other, the Republika Srpska, which covers almost half the territory and is home to Bosnia's ethnic Serbs. So in practice, Dodik operates almost as if he were the president of an independent state, one unrecognized by anyone, but entirely real and fully functional. Alright, with everything I've just told you, many of you are probably already getting a sense of just how complicated this country is to begin with. However, things get even more serious when the guy running Srpska has been openly encouraging secession and challenging the Dayton Peace Accords for quite some time. And that is what explains headlines like this.
Electoral authorities strip Bosnian Serb leader Milorad Dodik of presidency after court ban.
This past August 6th, the Bosnian electoral authorities decided to strip Dodik of his power, just days before the appeals court confirmed a 1-year prison sentence against him. Now, Serb Bosnian leader, court ban, conviction. I know many of you are probably thinking, hold on Josh, what on earth is going on here? Who is this man, and what exactly has he done to get kicked out of power so abruptly? Well, you see, Dodik is not some powerless regional governor with an office and an official car, but no real influence, not at all. As I was saying, he is a leader with direct control over almost half of Bosnia's territory. A man who also feels he has both the right and the legitimacy to decide whether or not to remain part of the country. And for some time now, all signs point to him wanting exactly that. To upend the game and blow Bosnia apart from within, yet again.
The trigger came in July 2021, when Valentin Inzko, the previous International High Representative, imposed a law banning the denial of the Srebrenica genocide, the 1995 massacre carried out by Bosnian Serb troops in which more than 8,000 people were killed. The response from Bosnia's Serbs was immediate, a total boycott of the state's key institutions. But Dodik didn't stop at leading this offensive. 3 months later, he raised the stakes. He announced that the Republika Srpska would withdraw from the national army and from the main judicial and prosecutorial bodies. It was as if he were sketching the borders of a new country while still inside Bosnia. Only the beginning of the war in Ukraine and the political earthquake it unleashed managed to temporarily halt his plans in 2022.
That pause didn't last long. Since Dodik returned to the presidency of the Republika Srpska in November 2022, his secessionist rhetoric has skyrocketed. Now, he doesn't even bother to hide it. He openly flirts with the idea of joining his territory to Serbia. And to push that agenda forward, he has once again stirred up the hornet's nest of ethnic tensions, exactly what Bosnia needs the least. The question is, why? Some say it's pure ego and hunger for power, but others see something deeper and perhaps more unsettling. And the truth, there are reasons to think the worst.
Russian President Vladimir Putin today expressed his solidarity with the pro-Russian secessionist politician Milorad Dodik, president of the Republika Srpska, who has passed laws aimed at countering the actions of the authorities of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
If there's one politician in the Balkans who could earn an honorary diploma in applied Putinology, it's Milorad Dodik. A man who not only doesn't hide his sympathy for the Kremlin, but wears it like a Medal of Honor. For example, he has gone as far as to call Vladimir Putin an exemplary leader and an ally of the Republika Srpska. Coincidence? Not a chance. Dodik is a regular at forums, conferences, and events organized by the Russian government. And when Brussels asked Bosnia to join the sanctions against Moscow for the invasion of Ukraine, his answer was a resounding niet, 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 niet. But he didn't stop there. In recent years, he's been parroting Moscow's talking points, blaming NATO for the invasion of Ukraine, criticizing the delivery of weapons to Kyiv, defending that Crimea is part of Russia, and in the process, implicitly recognizing the Kremlin's annexations. His roadmap couldn't be clearer. No NATO membership, military neutrality, and closer economic ties with Russia. And that includes openly embracing Gazprom's gas, even after international sanctions and the European Union's decision to drastically reduce the use of Russian gas. The result, among Bosnian Serb nationalists, his popularity is sky high, because for them, Moscow is not just a trading partner, it's their historic protector against the West, the perfect counterbalance to the power of the High Representative and NATO in Bosnia. In short, if it's raining in Sarajevo, he looks to Moscow to see if he needs an umbrella, but that was until now. Today, this man has been stripped of power by the Bosnian authorities, while he refuses to acknowledge it and clings to his office with tooth and nail. In theory, he is wanted across the entire country. In practice, he enjoys a protective wall he knows all too well, the Republika Srpska police, his personal stronghold. And what do you think the state police did with the arrest warrant? Go into his house and arrest him? Not a chance. As I've already told you, the situation is tense, and a single spark could blow everything sky high. Even more so after hearing the threat Dodik made following his sentence. If he were arrested, the Republika Srpska would respond with violence. And of course, in a country where barely 30 years ago, 100,000 people were killed, that doesn't sound like a bluff. It sounds like gunpowder. So the authorities have chosen to tread very carefully, and Dodik, for now, continues to roam free. For VisualPolitik community, this is not the only reason why Europe and Bosnia and Herzegovina's federation itself are on high alert. For years, as we mentioned earlier, Dodik has been flirting with an idea that sounds like a nightmarish deja vu, tearing Bosnia apart. And I repeat, it's not just rhetorical. This leader has already taken clear steps toward his ultimate goal, declaring the independence of the Republika Srpska. The problem is that this independence could become the spark nobody wants, the start of a new war in the country. So the question is inevitable. What has Dodik done to light the fuse again? Why does he seem willing to push tensions to the absolute limit? Could everything really collapse and take us back to the Balkans of the 90s? And how are Europe and the United States responding to this firestorm? Well, grab your popcorn because this story is about to get intense. Stay tuned.
Against everything and everyone.
Look, in a country where ethnic divisions influence everything down to your grocery list, the last thing Bosnia needs is for tensions between different communities to rise. Well, they have. Where? Exactly. In Dodik's Republika Srpska, the one I was just telling you about a moment ago. In recent years, headlines like these have become so frequent, they almost feel like part of the weather forecast.
New neo-Nazi graffiti painted on walls in Prijedor, Bosnia. Slovak embassy graffitis over vote on Srebrenica genocide.
And let's be clear, we're not talking about a couple of sloppy tags on some forgotten wall. No, these are messages signed by international neo-Nazi organizations like Blood and Honor and its militant wing, Combat 18, idolizing figures such as Ratko Mladic, the butcher of Srebrenica. And to make matters worse, these graffiti are appearing in majority Bosniak neighborhoods like Tukovi or Raškovac, where families returned after the 1995 war believing the horror was gone for good. But of course, if Dodik himself keeps pushing the idea that the Serbs were the true victims of the war, the breeding ground for this is ready-made. For Dodik, all of this is nothing more than history told wrong. He denies the genocide, legitimizes Serbian atrocities, and struts around in public as if Ratko Mladic himself were a national hero. And naturally, with that kind of discourse, it's no surprise that the threatening graffiti and intimidation are part of daily life in his republic. But the ultimate question is, why so much effort to rile up the Serbian community against their neighbors? Well, the answer might be simpler than it seems. He needs their unconditional support to achieve his grand dream, the independence of the Republika Srpska. But here's the catch. We're not talking about a new standalone sovereign state. Oh no, his plan is to merge it with another country. Can you guess which one? Bingo, Serbia. That one was easy, right? Because according to Dodik, his republic isn't a country in itself. It's a piece of something bigger, the famous Greater Serbia.
Bosnian Serb leader says Serb entity and Serbia to be one state.
It's no coincidence that Dodik gets along so well with the president of Serbia, Aleksandar Vučić, a politician whose playbook looks remarkably similar to his. Centralize power, tightly control the narrative, and if necessary, ignore half the world. But we'll talk more about this Balkan bromance a little later. The point is that Dodik has spent months stirring up the Serbs of the Republika Srpska to justify his steps towards secession and eventually annexation to Serbia. Let's just say he's basically planted a ticking time bomb under the country's institutions. And the most striking thing is that it feels more like a personal vendetta than an actual plan for governance. After being disqualified and sentenced to prison, Dodik has decided that court rulings are just fine as long as they're not against him. So instead of complying with the verdict, he's launched an offensive to shield his power within the Republika Srpska. He pushed through a law in his parliament to expel from his territory the state courts, the prosecutor's office, and even the Bosnian police. What's more, he has made it a criminal offense for any of these institutions or their officials to be present there. Yes, you heard me right. He made it a crime. And he didn't even stop there. Taking advantage of the moment, he also passed a foreign agents law, inspired by those in Russia and Georgia, a law designed to control NGOs, journalists, nationalists and anyone who dares to oppose him. More, of course. Dodik has also begun moving pieces to amend the constitution of his republic. But with what aim? Well, to create his own army, a border police force, and a prosecutor's office capable of investigating and prosecuting anyone he deems an enemy of the Republika Srpska. The message, as you can see, is crystal clear. Sever all ties with anything that smells of Bosnia. But hold on, we said all of this seems like revenge, and here's the question. Revenge against whom? Well, the target seems to be one man in particular, a figure as controversial as he is influential within the country. Christian Schmidt, the International High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Take a look. If there's anyone who keeps Dodik up at night, it's Christian Schmidt, the German who serves as the International High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina. And in a way, it makes sense. No other country in the world has a figure like this. But of course, as we've already said, Bosnia is not an easy country. It's a pretty unique one. Unique as a weird political laboratory experiment. Just to give you an idea, instead of having one president, the country is led by a collective body made up of 3 presidents at the same time. And then, every 8 months, each one of them takes a turn presiding over that body. But the key point is that we can say Bosnia has a Bosniak president, a Serb president, and a Croatian president all at once. And then, of course, the country also has its parliamentary assembly, which is its legislative power. But here's the trick. Every law passed by parliament has to get the green light from the different ethnic blocs. And if someone triggers the so-called vital national interest veto, then goodbye law. Well, now, what if no one vetoes it? Well, even then, it might still be useless because, as we've already told you, the High Representative also has the power to block it. And for years, this figure was almost decorative. Between 2014 and 2021, the role looked more like an honoured guest at diplomatic receptions than an actual political player, until Christian Schmidt arrived. Because Schmidt didn't come to cut ribbons or pose for photos.
UN representative imposes a ban on genocide denial in Bosnia.
Taking advantage of a measure his predecessor had introduced just before leaving office, Schmidt started, from day one, to tinker with the country's legal code, adding an explosive clause. Any official who disobeyed his orders would be prosecuted as if they had committed a crime. The result? Let's just say Dodik was instantly guilty, facing both prison sentences and disqualification from office. And from that point on, his war against the state institutions became total, with the accelerator pressed all the way down toward the independence of the Republika Srpska. In his narrative, Bosnia isn't a sovereign country, but a territory under the guardianship of Western powers. And that's why, according to him, the Republika Srpska must find its own path. Now, there's also something you can't really deny. Having a foreign official with the power to override parliament and remove anyone from office is not exactly a normal situation. But of course, here's the thing. When you have a leader capable of waving the flag of hatred in a region like this, who dares to remove that firewall? Still, what if I told you that this whole Dodik versus Schmidt saga, the vendettas and nationalist speeches, might just be the tip of the iceberg? Because yes, there are other players, some very far away, with a clear interest in seeing the separatist leader keep tightening the rope, even if it means reigniting the fuse in the Balkans. And we're going to start with the one that will probably seem the most obvious to you. Alright, I can imagine what many of you are thinking. If Dodik wants independence to join Serbia, then Serbia must surely be supporting him. Well, you wouldn't be far off. Because although Belgrade plays coy in public, behind the scenes, the signs are crystal clear. Serbia has never stopped pampering Dodik.
Serbian president travels to Bosnia to support convicted Bosnian Serb leader. Vučić calls sentence against Milorad Dodik shameful.
Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić has even gone so far as to call the sentence against Dodik shameful. And it's not just rhetoric. Serbia has been investing in the Republika Srpska for years, from infrastructure projects to development plans in key municipalities. However, despite all this, many analysts believe Vučić isn't really aiming for full independence. On the one hand, because that could blow up his attempts to improve relations with the European Union, and on the other, because keeping Bosnia on edge with Dodik gives Serbia a very interesting strategic card to play when negotiating with Brussels. And that's why, sooner or later, all eyes turn to Russia. As we've already mentioned, Dodik has close ties with Putin, and it's estimated that the Kremlin has invested several $100 million over the years in the Republika Srpska. But what if I told you that neither Serbia nor Russia is actually Dodik's main backer? What if I told you that role is being played by a country inside the European Union? Any guesses? Well, it might surprise you. Or maybe not so much, but we're talking about Hungary. Yeah, Hungary. You heard me right. And here's the thing. Viktor Orban's government hasn't just criticised the High Representative. No. From Budapest, they've openly accused him of destabilising Bosnia. And on top of that, Hungary voted against recognising the Srebrenica genocide at the United Nations. And we're not just talking about political gestures here. Orban has also opened the checkbook wide, pouring over 350 million euros in subsidies, loans and investments into energy projects and infrastructure in Dodik's stronghold, a veritable downpour of millions. And I know what many of you are thinking. Okay, but Serbia and Russia have done this too. And yes, that's true. But Budapest has gone one step further in supporting the separatist leader, a step that practically amounts to international political shielding. Take a look at this.
Dodik, 300 Hungarian anti-terror police deployed in Republika Srpska, per agreement with Orban.
Indeed, on the very day the court ruled against Dodik, Orban made his move. He sent members of Hungary's Special Operations Police to the Republika Srpska. Dodik claimed there were 300 officers, though other sources put the number closer to 80. Now, European police forces travelling to other countries for joint training exercises is not in itself unusual. But the thing is, this was no ordinary training. They arrived without prior notice, dressed in civilian clothes, and most seriously, without the consent of the Bosnian government. In other words, everything suggests that Orban wanted to have a rescue plan ready in case someone tried to arrest Dodik. And why do you think Orban would be willing to do something like that? Well, perhaps because for Hungary, backing him at a moment like this could mean becoming the main interlocutor with the Republika Srpska inside the European Union. If the powder keg explodes and Orban is the only one keeping channels open with Dodik, he could gain influence he currently doesn't have. At least, that might be the Hungarian Prime Minister's logic. In short, Bosnia is sitting on a barrel of gunpowder, and Dodik is holding the match. His separatist plan is moving forward, the institutions are wobbling, and hatred is once again circulating as political currency. If no one stops him, the country could suddenly find itself back in the Balkans of the 90s, and that's why many are now asking, could another war break out here? What can Brussels do? And Washington? Well, then let's find out.
Peering into war.
Well, then let's find out. Talking about a new war in the Balkans is no small thing. It means imagining a conflict that could set the whole region alight. The spark? A tiny dot on the map, small but explosive, that sparks the Republika Srpska in two, the districts of Brcko, a territory of barely 80,000 inhabitants that belongs to neither of the country's two federal entities, where Serbs and Bosniaks live in almost equal numbers. Its peculiarity? It either divides or connects, depending how you look at it, Srpska into two halves. After the Dayton Accords, Brcko was given a special status, its own self-government, and most importantly, the clause that, in an extreme case, the High Representative could maneuver to assign it to one of the two entities if the other breaks the peace agreement. In other words, it's the peace that ensures Bosnia's board doesn't collapse, but that very condition also makes it the most coveted prize if a crisis erupts. Because if Dodik declares the independence of the Republika Srpska, he would need this district to connect his capital, Banja Luka, to Serbia by land. And if he doesn't get it, we have the perfect choke point for a war. And here's the thing, the risk is substantial. The fight over this tiny spot on the map could drag half the Balkan neighborhood into it. The Bosnian Serbs could count on direct or indirect support from Belgrade. At the same time, Russia could see this as the perfect opportunity to send financial aid, or even military assistance, even if the war in Ukraine ends soon. For Putin, it would mean opening another front of instability in Europe, just as the Ukrainian front quiets down, a move that will allow him to keep meddling in European politics far beyond Kyiv. And if that happens, escalation would be inevitable. Bosnian Muslims could seek support from Turkey, and the from Croatia, which, as you know, is part of the European Union, and that's where the real problem lies. The possibility of dragging Brussels into a conflict in the very heart of Europe. That's why both some European countries individually and the EU as a whole are already taking steps to try to keep all this from spiraling out of control.
Germany and Austria impose measures against Dodik and the leadership of the Republika Srpska. Additional EUFOR peacekeeper troops arrive in Bosnia amid rising tensions.
In addition to the decision by some countries to sanction Dodik and his closest circle, the European Union has also begun to move on the ground. It has reinforced its peacekeeping mission in Bosnia with an additional 400 soldiers, bringing the total to around 1,500 troops. Which sounds good until you compare it with the 60,000 who were deployed in 1995 to stabilize the situation after the war. And while it's clear that such a large force isn't necessary today, 1,500 could be far too few if you're facing the 6,000 police officers of the Republika Srpska under Dodik's command. That's why more and more voices are calling for a serious deployment. Raise the European contingent to at least 6,000 troops, activate the High Representative's broadest powers, and, as the masterstroke, assign the district of Brcko to the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and of course concentrate much of the force at that key location. Locking down that point would be like putting a padlock on the powder keg before anyone can light the fuse. And watch out, because as you've just seen, this is a fuse that has all the ingredients to ignite at the slightest miscalculation, leading to a clash. We have ethnic tensions, a patchwork government with 3 presidents taking their turns according to their ethnicity, a deposed leader who ruled over half the country and refuses to step down. In short, total chaos. That's why many fear this could spiral out of control and repeat the tragic history of the 1990s in the Balkans, and it will only be a matter of time before we find out whether Dodik decides to take a step that blows everything apart. But for now, the question is for you. Do you think the Republika Srpska will end up defying Bosnia and declaring independence? Could this spark a new war in Europe? And what do you think should be done to prevent it? Well, leave your opinions down below in the comments and let's start the debate. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe to VisualPolitik if you haven't already. As always, thanks for being here. See you next time.